Thank you so much for joining us on the Dwelling Show. I'm your host, Ola Dantes. I've got the incredible, awesome Michael Green with us. Hey, Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ola. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, no, so happy to have you. We're both in the state of Maryland, getting to know you a little bit more. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. Yeah. So let's jump right into it. So, Mike, just tell us about your story. Like, how did you get started? What are you up to lately? And how in the world are you flipping like or getting like 100 deals a year? That's crazy.
So just to start off, I started off a guy who grew up in the projects poor, got in trouble as a kid, and around, as a teenager, a lot of trouble as a kid. And it really was kind of the pivot point in my life where I decided I needed to kind of become a better person and really work on being very different than what I grew up around, which was not always easy to do when you don't have a lot of role models. So it was the time in my life when I decided to take a different path. So I went on to get a job and, working a 9 to 5. Didn't have a lot of options as a guy without a lot of education, a little bit of a sketchy background. So I got into construction, well, flooring, by the way, and hated it, but it made me a living. And it was one of my few opportunities where I can make a pretty good living. I did that for about 8 years. And right around when I was 30 years old, I met someone who was flipping a house and I was doing flooring for him. And he was like, I'm flipping this house. And of course, I've been interested in flipping houses since I was a teenager, and the late night infomercials with Carlton Sheets. And I had always dreamed of doing it because it looked really cool with, the Ferraris and, the hot women and being rich. When you're poor, you're like, rich, what? It just seemed very instant, very like, I'm just going to fall out the sky.
I'm like laughing in the background here.
It
Mm.
was definitely for sure. It felt like it was going to be so much free money. So I did try it when I did actually buy the Carlton Sheets so long ago. When I was 15, I bought it COD, which means cash on delivery. Like a dude shows up your door and you gave him like $20 for this thing you bought. And I read it, and it was the first, it might be something older, but I believe it was like the first like no money down real estate investing book that they were selling, and he sold millions of them, made a lot of money. And I believe that what he taught was legitimate, but obviously as a 16-year-old kid from the projects, couldn't think outside of my current reality. I didn't have the confidence to do that. Now 15 years later, that seed had been planted and it had been watered over the years, and it started to get where I was getting more serious about it. What really helped me obviously was watching 17,000 episodes of Flip That House and Flip This House and Flip This House XYZ. It just was a lot of versions, and I was definitely a junkie, and it got me pumped up to flip houses. So when I met this guy, he's like, I got this guy who taught me. He's my mentor. And back then, this is 10 years ago, there was like only one mentor in town, a guy named Charlie Parrish, by the way. He was like the only gig in town. Not exactly my favorite dude ever, but he was all I had. And he did have some things he taught me and some things he taught me not to do, by example. I was like, I'm not doing that. But so I learned some lessons both ways. But he did teach me how to find deals and how to market and how to talk with sellers, which I think is probably the lifeblood of any flipping business. And after I worked with him, I'd spent almost 9 months, really 6 years reading books to just start with, kind of to preface that. And then when I finally made a decision to do it, 9 months running around with a realtor, looking at houses, putting in offers, just losing, losing, losing. Obviously, the realtor wasn't really an investor realtor, so they didn't know the techniques and tactics to get these offers accepted. And, I didn't know numbers and all that. I'm just kind of shooting from the hip, trying to figure it out. Once I started working with a mentor, legitimately in 5 weeks, I had my first deal. I ended up wholesaling it because I didn't have my funding together, and I made 16K. Now I paid him 15K, so I had to give him 15 of my 16K, by the way. So, but more than happy to do so, because that 12 months, 13 months after that, I did an additional 13 deals and was able to put 80K in the bank because I kept my job and I did this part-time. And that 80K to me was a lot. I don't think I'd ever had over 5 or 10K in the bank. And, because I was always like everyone, making money, spending it, making money, spending it, living the dream, always credit cards, spending more than we had. And so I never really had any real financial stability where I could grow money, because if I got any, I'd get a car or motorcycle or a dirt bike or something I didn't need, like we all tend to do. And once I did that, I took this big shift from, wanting to flip houses to actually being able to do it and having a system to consistently find deals. In the next 6 years after that, we got to where we were doing about 150 deals a year. We did run into 2016 where things started to get really good and the market was super hot. So that business didn't make as much sense. And you're seeing a lot of that now, that people are taking these really big businesses to do a lot of volume and they're constantly just bringing them down. So the new belief system that I created about 3 years ago when I went on my own and I kind of scaled my business down is I'm really big into scaling down in order to profit up. So when we talk about doing a lot of deals, every year I've been doing less and less deals. And now this year coming, I should only probably do maybe 40 or 50, which is not a lot for me. It sounds like a lot to some, but for me, that's a significant decrease in deals. But the interesting part of it is that my income has done nothing but go up for the last 3 years. As I've been scaling down, my profits have been going up. So it's been all about getting more purposeful. It's not been about running this big ego business. It's been all about like just making as much money on every single flip and getting really, and I call these high profit flips, getting really focused on the high profit flips, the ones that, and that could be if you're normally everyone's making 25 and you can figure out how to make 35K, that's a game changer. Like that extra 10K is the difference in you running an amazing business or a stressful business.
Wow. I mean, I was writing so many things down. There is just so much. You said something so powerful there, the scaling down to make more. I mean, that's amazing. That's like kind of, not what someone thinks of. You always think, oh, scale up, scale up, scale up. But, not just scale up just for scale up sake, right? It should be, like you said, intentional. So I really like that. A couple of things that you mentioned. So you got a mentor, a paid mentor, right? If there's somebody listening in on the show and they're saying, hey, Mike, I'm just starting out. I don't have any money. I don't know if I should pay for a mentor or get a mentor. I don't even know what to do. What do you say to somebody like that?
I can tell you that everyone I've seen, if you're not willing to make that big move and pay some type of mentor, where it's $1,000 class, you got to invest in yourself. And this is me, this is my belief. That mentor was not my first mentor. I still have coaches I work with today. Like my big shift when I was able to take my business from 80 hours a week and killing myself and, having like 16 people working for me on 90 grand a month in expenses down to 3 people working 15 hours a week. I was able to do that because of a mentor that I met. And I brought in someone very different. I'd always gotten the big gurus, 32K for this, 30 for that. And they taught me some things, obviously, and all those things added up to help me really understand the business. But the person who changed my life the most was an E-Myth coach. And he was one of the oldest E-Myth coaches. He currently still around today. I still work with him 3.5 years later. Costs me a bunch of money every month. He's not cheap. He only works with 5 people in the country because he is the oldest E-Myth coach. But he was able to take my business and like I legitimately in 1 year working with him, I made $236,000, like 400 and some dollars more in that 1 year. And this is the best part of it. It wasn't just the money piece of it. He showed me how to live my life. I went from working 60, 70 hours a week to like 15 hours a week. That same year I made that 200K. I went on 21 vacations that year. Me and him talked about how we could learn to run my business remotely. And, he suggested like, why don't you vacation more so we can figure out how to do the things that matter in your business. And it was a really great concept because as I was gone, I couldn't just jump in my car and go see properties. I couldn't just go do it. Often we just like, oh, I'll just do it. It's easier for me to do it. When you're in Costa Rica, it forces you to create systems. It forces you to delegate, hold people accountable. It forces you to become the right kind of leader for your business. So this was, I got to travel, which was super cool because I probably hadn't traveled. Well, I know for a fact I traveled more in that year, like probably double that year than I had my whole life combined. And it was really a lot of fun. I got to see, I'd never been outside the country. For a kid from Baltimore, in the projects, I thought the world was Baltimore. I didn't know that people in California are very different than people on the East Coast, very slow. I was at a red light in San Diego about a month ago and someone just stayed at the red light and no one beeped at them. They went through the whole green light and it went all the way to red. No one beeped. And we didn't beep because we were thinking like, well, what's going on? If you're in New York, they're beeping before it even turns green. They're beeping.
I'm just laughing so much in the back. That is funny. Wow.
That's what you get. And it's so nice to be able to see how people live different. And for us to become more rounded human beings, we have to be exposed to other cultures, other ways of being, different thought processes. And when you start traveling outside the US, you start to just see, one of the greatest lessons I learned, I would say this is probably from Costa Rica, is a beautiful country. And most people are not very wealthy, but most people are very happy. They have the necessities. They have, it's very abundant there. You can just eat a piece of fruit off a tree. So they're not starving. It's great country, great, just it's so beautiful that you don't need to be rich. And it starts to put into perspective, like when we're chasing money and we're thinking about like all these crazy things we believe we need, these fancy cars, and they're just sitting there like living in like a hut and eating pineapples that are probably as good as you'll ever eat and just living life. And so, yeah, I kind of scaled down my life a little bit too when I started getting out there and realizing like, okay, I need a small house, man. It's just me and my girlfriend. And yeah, we don't need 10,000 square feet. We need 1,000, 1,500 even would be fine, right? That would be big. So that's the stuff, that's the change. And a lot of that has flowed through my flipping business and allowed me to start really getting a lot better results because now I'm focusing on my houses and how to make them do something that a lot of people are saying can't be done right now.
Wow, like you're just saying so many good things. Like it's really fascinating because you got this mentor. He helped you scale down to make more profits. You traveled more, and then during your travels, you realized that wait, hold on a second. Look at these guys here picking up fruits from the tree, chillaxing, not killing themselves. With 100 hours, 80 hours, and they're still happy. Like I could take something from that, or look at these guys in California, like they're not beeping, they've got patience. I can take from that. And this all stems from real estate, right? Real estate investing essentially, right? Because you started flipping. So my question to you is, if there's somebody out there just, constantly kind of concerned and saying, hey, I've got a day job, I've got a mortgage to pay. I'm not sure if I can ever get started in real estate investing, or I'm not sure if my mindset is in the right place. Very generalistic question, but I just kind of wanted to get your feel for, what would you say to that person?
Well, first of all, I think that mindset obviously is going to be the biggest thing that's going to allow you to do this. When you actually were on my podcast recently and you talked about the fact that, being perseverance and sticking with things and being consistent and not looking for like instant gratification, but more delayed gratification and being just disciplined, right? That was your main word you used. And I thought that was so great because the reality of it is that's the key. You'll need to be disciplined. Now we talk about the job piece of it. I spent 13 months with a job and I would have never taken it any way other than how it happened. Because what happened when I was working 50 hours a week, it didn't allow me to take 8 hours to do a job. I had to figure out how to do it in an hour. So a lot of the amazing systems I still use today came from the fact that I only had minimum amount of time. And when you have less time, we figure out how to kind of compact things in and put them into that. We realize, oh, we thought we need to do these 6 things, but this is the one thing that needs to be done. And we make it work. So having a little bit of time in the evenings and weekends is actually a very desirable way. Now, obviously, if you don't know what you're doing and you're not learning and you're not educating yourself, you probably, taking the long route with little bits of time could be a bad combination. It'll cause you not to get results. So it is all about when you're new, figuring out the most purposeful things to do and then doing those like consistently with discipline in your spare time until you start getting results.
So I think we want to go back to a case study of one of your flips, right? So you said you watched so many flip shows, you kind of got ready, you jumped into flipping. Of course, you're flipping so many homes that obviously I'm never going to get you to talk about every single one of them, of course. So why don't we pick a case study of a deal that either you make the most money from or you helped someone the most. So talk about that deal in terms of how you found the deal and how did you actually fund the deal?
Okay. So I'll give you a recent one. We have I've done almost 1,100 flips or a little over 1,100 now. And so I have a lot of stories like that. When you're in the game, you're going to hit some home runs and some grand slams and some great stuff's going to happen. Recently, and this is just like a month ago, we had a deal that I bought from a student that was working with me, and he got it under contract for a really low number and, sold to me for $55K assignment fee, which I was more than happy to pay because the number is still pretty fair for me. I bought the house for 130. He had it under contract for 75. So first of all, just super proud of him to make 55K as an assignment fee because I was only looking to make about 35, 40K on the flip, and it was a $90,000 renovation. So he brung it to me knowing that I could kind of tackle a big renovation like that, where, a lot of people out there, if they're newer, you might not want to tackle something that big. You want to start off a little bit smaller until you get, your team around you. But I was able to really implement what I've been focusing on the last year I've been really focusing on nailing like my design, nailing my layout, layout, nailing the just the marketing of it, just every little aspect of my process so that I can get more from my flips. I want to do less and make more. And what happened, and this is one of the bigger ones that we've seen happen recently, is that we thought it was going to be a 300K house. We ended up realizing, okay, this thing turned out phenomenal, and maybe we can get 315 for it. So we listed it for 315. We got a bunch of offers, and we were able to negotiate using some of the techniques that I've started using recently to get more money. And like 5 days after being on the market, I was able to get someone up to 350K for the property. So it ended up going from like a 35-40 to a $76,000 profit. And the key was, so I ended up making a lot of money. He ended up making a lot of money. You talk about a win-win, just great for everyone. And the key though was that we put a lot of time and energy into this property, just the details, right? Making sure every little thing was perfect. And the person who bought it said, I'd seen 50 houses, but man, there was just something about yours. Like, you know, you had this thing here, you had this thing there. I was able to take them from what I would call a logical buyer to an emotional buyer. And that's been my big shift. If I can get them to emotionally make an offer, or emotionally negotiate with me, then they start to find some money in the socks, you know, in the boot, the hidden money under the dresser no one wanted to know about. But when it's a logical negotiation, then they'll just pay a fair price in my experience. So old me, you know, let's say first 10, 1,050 flips has been like logical, making money, very systematic, bringing in 30, 35K a house. The number's up to about 40K a house now because I've made that shift of making my renovations sell emotionally. And when they sell emotionally, it's just a very different situation. And that's a great way because we need to get a little more money these days because things are pretty competitive.
Right. No, that's really fascinating. When you were talking, just reminded me to one of our flips that we had, in 21224.
Okay.
Kind of, yeah. And then I remember like we had like this really cool awning on the outside. We had like the ceiling with kind of like rustic feel on it. And I'm a techie, so I had Nest thermostat in, Nest everything. So when our buyer was a younger girl, we had a lot of people look at it. It was like 5-10 days on the market, and then this girl just came and said, oh my God, this is my property. There was this big outpour of emotions in the letter, and she actually mentioned those design elements that we put in the house. So I can totally relate to what you're talking about, from logical to emotional, because when it's emotional, they will find the money from the socks to actually take that property. So yeah, I can relate. They will.
It's there. It's always there, by the way. It's so like the person who paid 350 was like, we're not paying a penny more than 320. And then 5 days later, and I got 10 offers and they know they're going to be out. All of a sudden they're like, okay, we'll put an escalation clause in. And I was like, bam, awesome. Escalation clauses are like someone showing me their hand in poker. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, thank you. Now I know you'll pay 350. So I negotiated everyone. I had a lot of negotiating, but I negotiated all the offers and kept just pushing them up. And eventually we got to a number that made a lot of sense. And the overall thought process of that, though, is like, get tough to get more, right? I mean, that's a big thing that I've been preaching to myself. Like, Mike, don't get like all soft and lazy because you've been doing this 10 years and you think you're good at this, right? That's when we stop working, when we think we're the best, right? I know that my journey is very long, and in this whole thing of learning real estate and being better at flipping is a very long-term journey. I made that shift a couple of years ago to realize that, okay, because I always thought like, look, I do 50 houses, I'll be the best then, or I'll be great, know what I'm doing. Like, dude, I'm still learning stuff every day and still like improving every day. And it's that mindset that has made me really successful, and not in a bragging way, just, but, allow me to be able to accomplish the things I want to accomplish. For 8 years of my 10, when I thought like there was this journey that had an end, like it always felt like it was either or, like I'm going to make it there one day, but then I'd be disappointed I didn't make it. And I had that shift to believe that, you know what, it's just an ongoing journey. Like mastery is a lifelong journey. If I'm doing this at 70, which I might be because I really love it, I'll still be learning and taking new notes, and I'd be a student still, obviously.
It's a long life, is a longer commitment, it's just, and perfection can never be achieved. You just have to keep going. So I love that. As much as I want to keep talking and keep going, we definitely dwelling into the quick rounds. These are going to be quick questions, quick answers. You ready, sir?
I'm ready.
All right. First question. What makes you, Mike, unique? What is that differentiating factor that separates you from the next guy or the next girl?
I would just say that I'm very stubborn and don't give up. And I've found that this might be the number one secret to success. If you don't quit, you will win. Like it isn't a matter whether you can win or you will win. It's just a matter of whether you'll do the work and stick with it until you do. And then you can decide whether, like you said, do you have a temperament for it, right? Is that something you have a temperament for? Or you enjoy the amount of work it takes? But stubbornness, if you don't have it, like just create it and just decide you're going to make whatever you want happen. Besides like me becoming like an NBA star, I probably can't make that happen, but real estate, the doors are wide open for you.
I love that. I love that. You got to be a GOAT. Yeah, I could totally relate. Totally relate. Next question. What was the last book that you read? And what was the one thing that you picked up from that book?
So the last book I read was a book called Mindset by Carol Druck. And the one thing I picked up is that, you have to be in that growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And you constantly have to keep growing and learning and realizing that there is no, I'm great. There's only, I'm on the journey working. And in that book, by the way, it's the last book I read, but I read it 2 or 3 times before that. I read it probably once a year. And every time I read it, because I'm growing, it has a different meaning and understanding to me. It just takes different new lessons from it that I didn't get the first few times I read it.
Yeah, great book, great book. Final question. You flipped about 1,100 homes. You're doing about 100 of those per year. You've got your girlfriend. You're traveling. Probably said the answer there. But what do you do for fun?
Well, sometimes I get a little too caught up in work, so I have to be careful of this. I mean, I don't do a lot of work in my flipping business, but I am coaching and mentoring and giving back and helping. And I totally approach that of just, being able to help others and give back. So it definitely can be time consuming. So I'm always trying to find the balance, but purely for fun, really it's getting into like traveling. I've been learning to snowboard in the last couple of years, which has been a lot of fun just to get me, we're not very active as real estate investors. We do a lot on computers. So getting out and doing some stuff. Also that helps me with the winters here, because it's always I don't love winter too much. I like the warm weather, but I've been learning to surf too in Costa Rica. And I suck at both, by the way, but a lot of fun trying to learn and get, just enough where I can do it and not be a complete goofball, but, have a little bit of fun with it. It just gets me out there, get me active. So that's been my thing.
Nice, nice. So if you have a dual listener, maybe from Maryland or anywhere else in the country, and thinking, wow, I really like this Mike guy. Maybe I want to get connected with Mike, or maybe I want to be his coachee or something. Where's the best place people can find you? Connect with you, learn more about you.
2 places. One would be my website, theflipfactor.net. Second place would be my personal email, mike@theflipfactor.net. Either's good. Obviously, if you want to learn a little more about me, some free stuff that we do and all that. I've been giving back in a big way, trying to create my legacy, since it won't be multifamilies and wealth. It'll probably be more in just helping others and giving back. I'm at that stage of my life where I can do. I've put a lot of work in and I'm financially in a good place and I'm able to give back and help now. And it's definitely given a lot of meaning to me. So I've been very, very blessed to be able to do that.
I bet. Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on the Dwellynn Show.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, man. It's been great on the show and look forward to talking to you in the future.